everybody, my name's Allie. I'm the VP of Customer Experience at Slack, and we're going to talk a little bit about remote work today. So I don't have to tell you that the last 7 months have been really hard. We weren't prepared for a world when we all started working from home and we lost access to schools for our kids and childcare. All of our normal activities have ended really abruptly, and we were separated from our friends and our family. Humans are great at a great many things, but three of the things we deal with really poorly: change, uncertainty, and prolonged stress. All three of those are bearing down on us right now. And many of you are doing okay, but I also know that many of you are not. I'm going to spend most of this time talking about what's going well, what we're learning, and where our opportunities are. And my hope is that this gives you some hope. But if you're struggling, this may fall flat. And wherever it lands with you, I want you to know that I'm not trying to tell you that how you're feeling is wrong. And regardless of how you're feeling, know that many of those around you are hiding how much they are struggling. One thing we know from our own company is that people say they're okay, and we see that they're getting a lot of work done. However, when you put out an anonymous survey to find out what's really going on, the story is very, very different. Many of your colleagues are having a tough time and they're hiding it. So I'm taking this moment to offer you some grace and empathy and understanding. It's one of the most important things we can do right now for ourselves and for one another. So that said, let's talk about what we're learning and what our opportunities are for a better future at work. We have at least 2 decades of research telling us that there's enormous upside in changing the way that we work. We've known for a long time that the standard way of working, which is coming into the office every day, working a fixed schedule, sitting in a lot of meetings, we know that it isn't the best way to work. We also know that there are ways to make employees more engaged, healthier, and happier. And we also know that these changes make teams more productive, which makes companies move forward faster. So the question here is, why haven't we done it? Like I said earlier, humans are not great with change, and we're not great with uncertainty. Sweeping organization-wide changes with unclear and potentially bad outcomes is something we collectively avoid. And together, we generally accept and understand and collectively reinforce this avoidance, mostly because we're all cut from the same change-averse cloth. So this pandemic has forced our hand on many of these changes that research has been telling us to make for years as companies. What are they? One thing is that we know that we have ebbs and flows of different types of productivity throughout the day. Some of us hit our creative peak at 7:30 a.m. We're in our best tactical mode at like 3:30 p.m. And we can power through a really productive afternoon if we take a long lunch break that includes a workout. And this is an example of a flexible working schedule. This is one that allows people to make the most out of how their brain works. And we now have 2 gifts making this possible. One is that we've regained a fair amount of time that we used to spend commuting, and the other is that we aren't tethered to an office. So I looked through our survey data at Slack. Specifically, we asked, what is going well since we all went home? And one thing that people said is, I don't have a commute. That was far and away the #1 response. Folks in our London office used to spend 2 hours each way on the train to get to the office. Tokyo seemed to average about an hour and a half. I'm in the Bay Area, seemed to be about an hour to an hour and a half. And this is an enormous amount of time that we've reclaimed for our lives. People are finding great ways to take advantage of this in their personal lives, from getting more sleep, to getting more time to work out, to getting more time with their family, to getting more time to cook. And this, as people, is enormously beneficial to us. So this sounds great. When we think about a flexible working schedule where people can tap into that 7:30 a.m. creativity peak, that 1 p.m. Workout time, but the change-averse side of us can come up with a list of potential downsides to this. Some of those are like, how do I know if my team is working, if they're not working a solid schedule? When can I schedule meetings if I don't know when everyone is online? And I'd encourage everyone to ask not what could go wrong, which is our tendency as people, but instead to ask what could go right. And again, research tells us that a flexible work schedule is how people work best. And I'm not advocating for an ad hoc work schedule. It's totally okay to expect people to have a schedule and to stick to it. But we do know that people are more productive and more engaged when we loosen the ties on the 9-to-5 workday. And the reality is that a lot of you, and if you're a manager, a lot of your employees are doing this to some extent. They're doing it whether you've explicitly condoned it or not. And this is actually really good and really healthy. So if you're in one of these companies, congratulations. Take advantage of this opportunity to figure out how you work best, to take control of your time, your creativity, and the times that you can be most productive and happiest doing your work. And if you're a manager who's moving forward with this flexible work schedule situation, you're doing a great job. You're on the leading edge of a movement that's going to make people's working lives better. Now, on the flip side, I know that some employers have cut off this avenue altogether. They've rolled out monitoring software, and some companies go as far as requiring their employees to keep their webcam on all day to ensure that people are working. And this is a huge step in the wrong direction. It's a signal to employees that they aren't trusted. Nobody thrives in an environment where they aren't trusted, and this leads to disengagement, disgruntlement, and ultimately it's going to lead to employee attrition. Employee attrition is especially hard right now. We all know the sort of additional challenges to hiring remotely. At Slack, about 20% of our company we've hired since we all went home in early March. So 20% of our company has never met somebody in person, has never been to one of our offices, has been interviewed entirely through Zoom. And it's a hard way to connect with people, to get to know them, and to bring them on board. So when we think about ways to keep our employees in the company, keep them engaged, and to bring on new people, one thing that we can do is just empower our employees as much as we possibly can, because this is the way that we all work best as humans. We love autonomy. So this brings us to another change, and this one's a little harder to implement. It's a shift away from managing by supervision, which sometimes is called managing by walking around, and it brings us to managing by output. So if you trust your employees to get their work done, and it's really clear to them what they need to do, then you actually start managing their work and looking at what they're doing, giving them frequent feedback, tightening those feedback loops, and helping them to get to a better result. So someone's presence in the office or at their computer doesn't produce any results for your business, and it actually never did. It's their work that you need. So both of these changes, flexible work schedules and managing to output, these are counterexamples to what I'm going to call the lift and shift that many companies did in March and April. What we did is we lifted our in-office practices and we shifted them to our homes. What this looked like is that in-person meetings became Zoom meetings. The after-work happy hours became Zoom happy hours, and team lunches became Zoom team lunches. And we never really thought about whether any of this made sense, because we just tried to do what we had always done in the best way that we could. So I'd like to put these two things together. If we lift our way of working out of the office and we shift it to our homes, we're ignoring all the benefits that are unique to working together in an office. But we also know that people can be more productive when they have more control over their schedules. And for a lot of you, we know that if you're parents, you simply can't work a standard 9-to-5 day work day right now. You have childcare duties. You are running a tiny little school in your houses, and the structure that we expect out of a workday simply doesn't fit with that. So this takes us to a concept called asynchronous work, and it requires a couple of changes to your company's operations and your company's culture. From an operational standpoint, your company needs to rely much more heavily on communication tools and less on real-time conversations. And at Slack, our reliance on our own product has gotten us to an even deeper level to facilitate this. We've always used Slack extensively, obviously, at Slack, but we've kind of gone another level. And one thing that people always ask is, like, when you work at Slack, how do you know when to send an email and when to use Slack? And the answer is, we never send email. We never have. So it's not like we took emails and put them into Slack. We were already there, but we are using channels so deeply to drive every aspect of product and projects. And this is all done asynchronously, because we do have parents who have to hop out for homeschooling, 1 to 3 hours a day. And what we do is we'll drop a question or we'll drop a document in a channel and say, can you review this? So from a culture standpoint, this requires two primary changes. And one is clear communication of timelines. So it's no longer enough to say, can you review this spreadsheet? It needs to be paired with a time horizon. So can you review this spreadsheet by the end of the day tomorrow? And number two, it's going to require more discipline around deciding what is truly urgent and what can wait. The office was really good at providing us with instant results because you could pop by someone's desk and get a question answered in 2 minutes, but that's not the world we're living in. And it turns out that if you take a moment to ask yourself when you really need something, you'll discover that it's often something that you don't need immediately. So this brings us to culture, and culture is top of mind for nearly everyone these days. It's one of the things that I get asked about the most. We all want to preserve our culture, and we want to make sure it doesn't erode. So it's useful to take stock of what we mean by culture and to tease apart the different pieces that we're worried about losing. There are 3 pillars that I look at. One is how we work with one another, 2 is how we treat one another, and 3 is how we connect with one another. Now, these first 2 pillars of culture, how we work and how we treat one another, are pretty immutable. So we all went to our homes knowing how to do those 2 things at our company. And I found that the last one, which is how we connect, that's the thing that's top of mind for most people when they talk about preserving their culture. And the reality is that it's a lot harder right now because it takes effort. It requires effort to connect when we don't have an office to facilitate those easy connections for us. Exactly how you do this will be heavily dependent on your own company culture. So I'd encourage you to explore things like group calendar blocks for casual drop-in conversations where people can just optionally drop in, and it's really more of a social interaction like you'd have if you met somebody in the lunchroom than a structured meeting. There are tools like Icebreaker, which really good for teams that don't know each other super well. It'll offer up a bunch of questions. They can be completely silly. They can be kind of serious. You can kind of choose your flavor of icebreaker. Um, and a consistent practice, this is something that I do in my team meetings and have done for years, is at the beginning of every team meeting, we spend 5 to 10 minutes just checking in. It's how's it going? How are you feeling today? Who's the person showing up to this meeting? And that's one key way that we all stay connected to one another, as people, not just as colleagues. So those are 3 ideas. If you Google, you'll find so many more, but I encourage you to try a few with your team, see what works and what falls flat, and just iterate from there, because every team has a different dynamic, and there's not a staying connected playbook that's going to work for everyone. So this is a lot. To sum it all up, I think we have a few opportunities at our feet. Number 1, we can lean into flexible working schedules, and we can lean into asynchronous work. Research tells us this is a path to better employee engagement, which leads to more productivity. Number 2, we can evolve our management practices to look even closer at outcomes. This should lead to tighter feedback loops on someone's work. These tighter feedback loops actually make work go faster, and it helps employees grow in their own careers. And finally, we can use this time to understand more about our cultures of how we get things done, how we make iterative improvements, and how we connect to one another. So all that said, thank you so much for your time. Ireland, I know you just went on lockdown. I wish you all well in getting through it, and we're all thinking of you. Thank you so much.